Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 15. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Monday, Steelers Nation, in what should be a very busy week. Pittsburgh practicing Monday and Tuesday, but the headline news will be the Steelers and the rest of the NFL trimming and whittling down their rosters to 53 men by Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern times. And then any post-cut down, moving and shaking, we both expect some outsiders to be added before this team takes a flight to Atlanta in week one. Pittsburgh finishing up their preseason over the weekend with a loss to the Detroit Lions, 24-17. Pittsburgh winless this preseason, but the offense look better, albeit against Detroit's backup. So, Dave, a ton for us to tackle today. Hopefully you had a good weekend. It's going to be a busy next 72 hours.
Yeah, it will be, and it'll be busy probably a little bit past there as well, too. We'll have to wait and see what happens with any contract extensions. But even though this is not a game week, we will be busy. The March to 53 is underway. We'll cover a little bit of that in the show, get to our final 53-man roster predictions. And, yeah, this should be a pretty fun show. Where would you like to start?
Let's start with the most immediate news that came out Monday, and then we'll tackle the game and then do our roster predictions. Pittsburgh officially announcing 8 players being waived, being released off their roster before the team hit the practice field Monday. They are running back Dajon Edwards, wide receivers TJ Luther and Jacob Copeland, offensive lineman Tyler Beach, that's a guard, offensive tackle Devery Hamilton, nose tackle Marquise Spencer, linebacker Kaihava Tezino, and cornerback Keandre Thomas. Also a report from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that cornerback Kyler McMichael has been released, but he was not part of the list issued by the team. So I don't think anyone had to sit down for those list of 8 names there. All expected, to not make the 53. We'll see if any are able to circle back to the practice squad. Being released this early, not a great sign for those chances. Edwards, the most notable name, a fun contact balance runner out of Georgia, just didn't get many opportunities in training camp.
Yeah, he was the lone undrafted free agent on this first initial list here. There, because of the signing bonus, that he received $6,000 in dead money in 2024 and another $12,000 in dead money in 2025. You're going to see that a lot of small dead money charges here as we work through the rest of the cuts, I would imagine. And yeah, I'm with you. My jaw did not hit the floor when these first 8 names were released.
Yeah, Luther had an opportunity against Buffalo to make that 40-yard touchdown catch from Justin Fields. Those two not on the same page. Hamilton struggled against Detroit. I'm sure we'll touch on that briefly here. And guys like Tezino and Thomas were pretty late adds to give this team some depth against injuries. So that's the initial list of 8, and this team will continue to make cuts again before that Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time deadline. All right, Dave, let's talk briefly about this Lions finale. I know the caveat to some of our commentary will be about the Lions did not play, I don't think, a single starter in this game, offensively, defensively, and so there's context there, but it's still good for the Steelers offense to march down the field, put the ball in the end zone a couple times. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields leading touchdown drives. The only thing that would have been worse, Dave, against that Bills game into the Lions game was for Pittsburgh to not be able to move the ball against the Lions' second and third stringer, so we can save ourselves from that conversation at the very least, even if the actual touchdown, again, was Pittsburgh starters versus the Lions 2s and 3s.
Yeah, I think the main thing you wanted to come out of this was positivity and fluidity. Mike Tomlin kind of hit on the fluidity part, I think, ahead of this game. And at least you got that out of the first couple of drives there. 5 plays, 60 yards, 2 minutes and 13 seconds off the clock with the Steelers starters there. I think the big thing to note in there was they were faced with a 3rd and 11 on that opening drive, and Russell Wilson connected with George Pickens over to the left side for a 32-yard play, first explosive play they had of that game that obviously moved the chains. And, that was good to see because, what happens? What are the murmurs against this Lions backup defense? If you get in a 3rd and long situation, you don't convert. You're almost forced at that point probably to bring Russell Wilson out for one more series. We're obviously just speculating there, but good thing they converted that 3rd and long. The next play, obviously, a right end to Cordell Patterson. It goes negative yardage. So in your first few plays there, you have a couple of negative plays, but then on 2nd and 12 from the Lions 31, you run some mid zone. You get some great blocks from Zach Frazier and Isaac Seumalo up front, parting the Red Seas. And you get a guy like Cordell Patterson that made a nice quick cut into that hole. And then you get to watch a defensive back clap at air down the field at Cordell Patterson, went 31 yards for a touchdown. So even though there was some negative in that 5-play drive, there was some positive, obviously being the third and long conversion and the explosive play run for a touchdown by Cordell Patterson. So that was obviously good to see. You get your second team offense out there on the field. And you get, Justin Fields completing a couple of passes. And I think one of the big things there was the play anticipation throw down the middle of the field from just pretty ball into a behind the guy running the pole there, or in the window there. And just on the money throw from Justin Fields to Michael Pruitt down into the low red zone. We got to see a couple of things once they got down into the red zone. A quarterback sweep that unfortunately did not to the left side, that did not go for a touchdown. And they were able to cap it off though with a 1-yard LaMichael P. Ryan run on a read option that was blocked up very well. Pat Freiermuth helping collapse down that left side over there. So some good there, obviously, with Fields making a couple of completions, and you like the down the middle of the field anticipatory throw on time, got the ball out quick off play action there. So yeah, mission accomplished as far as getting some positivity out of your first 2 drives there with 2 different quarterbacks.
It's good to feel good going into week 1. It doesn't mean much for the team's success and chances versus Atlanta. This will all be a distant memory come kickoff on September 8th, but still good to get something positive for the offense after struggling the first 2 games. I thought Fields, he looked, it can sound cliche and trite, but I just thought he felt more confident, played a little looser, was able to push the ball downfield, take some, kind of aggressive chances, but nothing reckless. The throw over the middle that you referenced to Pruitt, but later in the game, that throw to Van Jefferson on that crosser in some tight traffic, but where the ball needed to be, Jefferson making a nice catch and hanging on. I just thought Fields played a little more freely than he had, say, against Buffalo.
Yeah, look, both these quarterbacks, Wilson and Fields, I thought, again, look, you can't control who you're going against. You can only control what happens on your side. And I thought they did everything that was asked of them. The only real kind of glaring negative thing when that first team when the first team offensive line unit for the most part was still out there, I think they got Isaac Seumalo out of the game fairly quickly there, and then I think brought Spencer Anderson in at left guard there. But the miscommunication on the snap there, where Frazier was tapped and I don't know if the crowd noise had anything to play into it, but obviously Justin Fields was not expecting that snap when he got it. Luckily, that was not a turnover, but for the time that Fields was in that game, I'm with you. I thought he felt relaxed and wasn't pressing and took what was given him. And obviously, as we referenced, the middle of the field throw to Michael Pruitt was good. So a positive way to end the preseason for those two quarterbacks.
Yeah, the snap issues have been reoccurring, and that obviously can't happen at all in the regular season. But I chalk that up to first game on the road. You're working on a silent count. I think that was Frazier just snapping too early. Fields was trying to put, I think, Calvin Austin in a short motion. And if you look, when that ball is snapped, Spencer Anderson was still looking in the backfield. So I know Anderson tapped him initially, but sometimes you mix up the tap and fake things sometimes if defenses can't key in as easily. So I'm pretty sure Frazier just had miscommunication in that first road environment. Well, the other thing I noticed in this game that we can take away for the regular season was the use of Fields in the design quarterback run game. We saw that on a quarterback split zone read. We saw quarterback power in low red zone on the goal line, and then read option for the P. Ryan touchdown you referenced. And so those are the types of plays I think we'll see with Fields. He'll be the backup. Russell Wilson will start in this one. The fact that Wilson only played one series is indicative of his firm standing as his team's number one quarterback, although not officially announced by Mike Tomlin. But the package plays we should see from Justin Fields, those will be some of those read options and quarterback power, design, QB run game to force defenses to game plan for, to prepare for it, to account for it. So that is one takeaway that I can put into that week one basket.
Yeah, we've talked about that all off season here. They've got to find a way to get Justin Fields on the field in certain situations. And I think we've got enough evidence of that now through the 3 preseason games that we can expect some of that. Now, will it be 10, 12, 14 plays a game? I don't think so. But if you get in short yardage situations, or if you get in a low red zone situations, that's when you're most likely to see him. And put me down for wanting to be in the low red zone quite a bit.
Amen to
that. With this offense, that will obviously be a good thing to watch transpire if this team can move down into the red low red zone quite often, especially at the start of the season here. So yeah, look, I liked it overall. Got to see Pickens with some yards after the catch, and you had a little post about some of the improvements that he's had in his career in that aspect of it. There was that negativity with the snap that they've had a couple of issues with here. Hopefully start getting that cleaned up, especially when you go on the road with these first 2 road games. So that is a little bit of a concern, especially when you got a rookie center in there. But speaking of rookie center, I mean, Zach Frazier did everything that he was supposed to do outside of that, I thought, starting obviously with that Cordell Patterson touchdown run, and had him a nice pancake on another pass that ended up going to the opposite side of the field. Really just showed that physicality, the refitting of hands, the ability to reach block. He is as advertised. Now, where there'll be probably a few growing pains here as he gets into the regular season, probably. But, as far as a scouting aspect of what you saw on tape and what you would expect from him moving on into the NFL level, I liked it, and I know you did as well too. I think that's where we're at here, and I think with that first team offensive line, it will be interesting to see your group of left to right. I mean, obviously, Zach Frazier is going to be at center. Your 2 guard spots are taken care of, and Sayamalo and James Daniels. Dan Moore, man, he really had a good preseason. There's no 2 ways around it, I don't think. In the limited amount of snaps that he played at left tackle, it really does feel like he's going to be your starting left tackle to open up the season. And I know there's been a lot of speculation about what's going to happen on the other side there. Troy Fautano obviously missing the last 2 preseason games with that sprained knee. Broderick Jones having issues in that second preseason game. but I thought Broderick Jones even kind of represented himself a lot better in this finale here. I think you're probably going to see Broderick Jones open up the season at right tackle, and Dan Moore did not do anything wrong to get overtaken here. Now, at some point, will Fautanu see this starting lineup? I think so, but it will be a natural progression. Probably another one of those things where Uncle Dave says, well, this one just came out in the wash here.
Yeah, we'll see. I know that Jerry Dulac, when the injury first happened, really indicated that Fautanu wouldn't skip a beat, would step in, be the first team right tackle for Atlanta out of the gate. He kind of, I think, walked those comments back a little bit pregame before the Detroit contest and said he's not sure if he'll start or not. He'll start sooner than later, but it's not guaranteeing him to start week 1 against the Falcons. It may depend on, obviously, his health and his overall readiness. It would make sense, though, for that initial game, given the time that Fautanu was missed, 2.5 preseason games. It's a large chunk of time, opportunity, and reps for Moren Jones to be the starting tackles out of the gate. But that one is still, I think, up in the air. It's still hard to see Broderick Jones not starting. As you said, I agree, a bounce back performance in Broderick Jones. I know some in the local media trying to get on him for one rep where, Fields got sacked. That was Devery Hamilton getting beat. That was the back getting beat. Broderick Jones was perfectly fine on that pass set. So no issues there. Just a good game overall. And that's encouraging to see. And probably good for his confidence as well. 23-year-old taking a lot of heat. I'm sure not feeling too great about that. So just a little prove it to myself, even though he was not facing Aiden Hutchinson in this game. So yeah, I think right now, still a little unsure, but Moren Jones as the starting tackles makes the most amount of sense to me for week 1.
I would agree.
Thought the other quarterbacks did well. I thought all 4 quarterbacks played well in this one. Wilson and Fields and Kyle Allen, a couple of pretty passes down the right sideline, and even John Rice Plumlee getting in the game, which was fun. Unfortunate that 4th down completion to Quez Watkins was called back on the Joey Fisher, ineligible man downfield penalty, and then he false started. Fisher did on the next play to force Pittsburgh to punt, but it was just nice to see all the quarterbacks play well, especially in that road environment.
Nice reward for Plumlee, because he's been, I'll do anything you ask me to do kind of guy throughout the preseason here, and obviously didn't get into the first 2 games. Look, Mike Tomlin got the best, indeed, ahead of this game. He said trying to get the best of both worlds here in this preseason finale, because of only being 3 obviously on the schedule, and you're trying to get the best of both worlds out of what would be a 3rd and 4th preseason game if you had one. I think Mike Tomlin had to come out of that game overall feeling that he accomplished that, because he got his starting unit out there, got him to move the football down the field and get a touchdown, got his second string quarterback in there behind almost the full offensive line, was able to go down and get a touchdown there and get into the second half. Got his 3rd quarterback on the field, and Kyle Allen, who did not play in that 2nd preseason game. And then you got to round it out by, getting the back end of the roster guys on the field for last couple of possessions in that game. You even got some Mason McCormick at center in those final 2 possessions of the game as well. And if not for some negativity with that offensive line group in those final 2 possessions, who knows how one of those drives maybe filters out there. But yeah, not a lot to talk about overall, I don't think, when you got into the second half late, especially halfway through the 3rd quarter of this game there. But I think it goes back to, I think Mike Tom, other than winning the game, you played to win the game. Other than that, I think they were able to get a lot accomplished. I think Mike Tomlin said as much in his opening statement after the game.
Well said and well framed by you, Dave. 100% agree. Defensively, Pittsburgh's front 7, which didn't play several starters in this one, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, Joey Porter Jr. all sat out. Patrick Queen played limited snaps in this one. I think the first 2 possessions, but still that front 7 overwhelming the Detroit Lions backups. 5 sacks on Hendon Hooker in the first half. Nick Herbig had 2 in the first, I think, 5 minutes of this game. You had, I think, 3 straight plays where the Lions were sacked by Herbig and Benton and others. And so, it is just preseason, just against some of the backups. Obviously, Sewell and those top names for Detroit did not play, but still, Herbig is just an unblockable man. And you see his jump in year 2 and Keanu Benton in year 2 as well. Those guys are just super fun to watch. And, they were beaten up on probably some lower competition, but we know they can do the same against starter caliber players.
Man, you've gotten to the point now with Nick Herbig where you're like, man, get him out of the game.
Yeah.
put that boy in bubble wrap. Oh boy, that you want to talk about, man, if you're gonna be wrong about a guy, be way wrong. One of the biggest things, look, we talked about his run defense and that being one of the things if he was going to stay on the edge. He obviously had the athleticism and all coming out of college as an edge rusher. The measurables and kind of the concern of the frame and the ability to play against the run, we got some of those questions answered in his limited playing time as a rookie. The pass rush aspect we obviously saw, and we've talked about, man, when he was on the field as a rookie, you knew when he was on the field that way. I think one of the things in the snaps that he's played in the preseason here is you're continuing to see him progress as a pass rusher on both sides of the field. You talked about coming out of that second game, I think, the speed to power aspect there. We saw him work on an inside spin. He even kind of, one of those, didn't he have to spin back up the arc to get the kind of a cleanup sack on that? He has awareness of how deep he is in the pocket and staying on plane. One of the things about Bud Dupree I was thinking about the other day is Bud Dupree would go way up the arc. Remember that? And he would have a hard time of getting back in line and on plane to get some of those sacks. One of the things I think that have stuck out with Herbig is he has a good sixth sense about his depth on rushes and where the quarterback is in the pocket and the ability to reverse and not get too deep and take himself entirely out of plays that maybe his initial rush did not get him close to the quarterback on. So that's one thing there. And just how he's progressing with initial pass rush moves, with counters, the speed, the power. Obviously, on one of those that did not end up in the sack, you saw him move to the inside. He was schemed into a position where he got a free run, and I guarantee you 8 times out of 10 he's going to clean that up. He's not going to miss a sack on that one. And I think I've talked about how we're probably going to see instances where there's 3 outside linebackers on the field. You almost have to do that with these 3. It would be criminal not to, because of the quality of players, and you just don't have. You could take either one of those 3 guys now and have them at the stand up in the middle of the defense and leave the other 2 on whatever respective side. So that, in the past, you kind of wondered, okay, maybe Watt's going to be the guy that mainly moves inside. You really now can with all 3 of those guys mix and match when you put them on the field of who's going to do what, because they all can get it done from any position and really any side for that matter. So, man, if there was a star period coming out of the preseason for this Steelers team, I mean, it most definitely is Nick Herbig, and they got themselves a dog in that dude, and he's going to impact the sack column for this team in 2024.
3.5 sacks last preseason, 3.5 sacks this preseason, the latter tying the NFL's top mark. Yeah, that A-gap blitz that he had, that free rush, that was in Pittsburgh's overfront. You saw some of the game planning Mike Tomlin discussed where it wasn't quite as vanilla schematically. They ran a lot of their dime defense. They ran their overfront. They ran a couple different other packages. And so that's one variation of it, but there should be some true, like you said, 3 outside linebacker looks where maybe someone's over the A gap, maybe someone's over end. I saw that in training camp in some more obvious passing situations. We had Herbig more over the tackle and, Watt outside the tackle and both rushing off the same side. So a lot of things you can do. Listen, Nick Herbig would be a starter on a lot of teams, and he's Pittsburgh's number 3 that can come and rotate and keep Watt and Highsmith fresh. And so to have that kind of depth is what Pittsburgh's aim has always been, to be super strong at outside linebacker, the engines of their defense. And so to have that top 3 is as good of a top 3 as Pittsburgh has had in quite some time.
Absolutely. Once again, really impressed with him. And, he did not have, obviously going up against, backups and all like that. But, the Steelers did not put TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith on the field any. And when you go out there as a first team edge rusher, regardless of who you go against, you got to get it done. And Nick Herbig did that. I mean, I had seen enough of him after really the first sack, but after getting after getting that strip sack on top of it, it was most definitely time to get him out of the game. Another Wisconsin product making the jump that we had hoped he would make in 2024, and that's Keanu Benton. And it's a shame that he lost a few snaps in that game where he got poked in the eye early, because he was doing what he needed to do in that game. But man, this was an instance against Detroit where he was playing with his food. He was trying out some things. You saw the arm over spin back inside that he won with. And that's when you want to do that kind of stuff is in the preseason. And, I think he said in that sit down interview, and Missy Matthews talked about the weight loss and all like that he felt like he didn't need it. He dropped that weight. He still feels as strong and as explosive as ever at this point. And once again, we didn't see him a ton in totality during the preseason, but I know you were the same way. When I pulled up that all 22 tape, man, he's one of the first people that I went to early in the reels to see what he did. And he was impactful, and he's going to provide this team a lot of pressure up the gut in pass rushing, in opportunities to get out the quarterback. And he played, we saw a couple of snaps where he did what he needed to do and either hold the gap or get off a block and make a run, get in on a run tackle as well too. So, really excited. Those 2 Wisconsin products really had fine preseason overall.
Just draft Wisconsin defenders is the MO for Pittsburgh, and they've found a lot of success in doing so. According to my charting, if you want the stat, in the 3 preseason games, and it's not like Benton, as you mentioned, with the eye injury in the opener, or Herbig played a ton of snaps, 10 combined pressures between Herbig and Benton in 3 preseason games. Don't have the exact snap count and rush opportunity, but the number, I'm sure, was not large. And so, yeah, just dominant performance from them. Larry Ogunjobi continued to look good. And so it's been a really good summer for Ogunjobi.
Best preseason he's had with this team. Although there have been only a few of them, he looks as healthy as he's ever looked in a Steelers uniform.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, him being healthy and not having those nagging foot and toe injuries that have hurt him in the past. So he's still got to translate this to play this way in the regular season. You would expect a veteran of his capability and resume to look good when healthy in preseason action, but still happy and encouraged and hopeful, don't know and need to see it, obviously, but hopeful that Ogunjobi can keep this strong play up once the regular season kicks off.
Man, that front, if they stay healthy, that's going to be a good front for sure. And look, Benton and Herbig now have reached the criteria of, I don't know how much you need to see them to in preseason period moving forward in their careers. Obviously we got a ways to go before we have to worry about that. But I mean, you've got a lot of guys right now in that front, and we'll obviously see what happens with the Cameron Hayward contract extension in the next several days and all like that. But this front right now, and obviously Larry Ogunjobi, going to be interesting to see the season he has. But this front this front looks good. If there's one thing that you can come away with for sure out of this preseason on either side of the football, that you would hang your hat on as a team, it would be that Steelers defensive front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the front seven is going to be the strength of this defense, as it often is, and needs to be for Pittsburgh this year. Any other thoughts here defensively in this preseason game?
Thought Loudermilk did a couple of nice things in this game. Leal, which was we saw a little bit of it already, but getting more at him and Herbig were the starting outside linebackers in this one. What other takeaways were there up the middle? I thought Lowry had an okay game, did some things I wanted to see him do, and Montravius, had a reputable preseason, I thought. So once again, I think this team, obviously, any team, it's tough to overcome injuries to guys like Hayward and Watt and like that. But this is the deepest. This is the best unit and the deepest unit on this team, I think, is the defensive line.
Yeah, I think it's really strong up front. The entire front seven, I think, is strong across the board. Secondary, less to note overall. Corey Trice making some good plays downhill, blowing up another screen pass. Second time he's done that in a preseason game this year. Beanie Bishop working second team, second half, slot corner. Thomas Graham getting the nod. Mike Tomlin saying post-game that Bishop still didn't really get enough quality reps throughout the week of practice to earn the first team reps there. I don't think Graham nor Bishop were terrible, but neither really made impact plays either. And so how much did they really help their cause? We'll talk about that a bit more when we discuss our final roster predictions here. Other than that, we can talk injuries here. A lot of injuries defensively per Tomlin post-game. Corey Trice with a groin injury. Julius Welshoff with a knee injury. Hopefully that's not serious. Welshoff with 2 sacks in this game.
Yeah, good for him.
High-quality sacks in the world, but still sacks are sacks. He had 3 of them this preseason. Awesome for him. Hopefully that injury is not serious. And then Ryan Watts, a scary-looking injury, very late in this game, less than 2 minutes left, game essentially over. He took a knee to the head. Tomlin calling it appeared to be a stinger. That's what Tomlin said post-game. Thankfully, Watts was able to walk off the field because that looked very, very scary initially. So we don't have exact confirmation on that, but seems to have avoided anything very serious. Ryan Watts did, so that's good.
Yeah, some missed tackles by that defense again when you got later in the game. Couldn't hold the fort when it comes to that. If you want to talk about defense and the defensive front being the deepest part of this team, there are a lot of questions about this secondary heading into cut down day and on into week 1. Joey Porter evidently is dealing with something. It appears hopefully to be minor in nature. He sat this one out. I thought Trice did do good things against the run. I would have liked to see Trice tested in the passing game throughout the preseason more. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. The whole Graham Bishop thing, there's a lot of questions there when it comes to the slot in general. There's just there are a lot of questions once you get past the frontline starters in the secondary, and one starting position in particular, the starting slot corner position, is going to be interesting to watch that come out in the wash there. So I don't know if we got some of the questions. I know I didn't. I was left wanting more when it came to the slot in the backup corner positions overall throughout the preseason there. Cameron Sutton getting late, getting time in this game once again as safety. Good to see him get an interception and kind of peel off and go down low to get that one off of I think a ball that probably should have been caught, but he still got it. He took out his frustrations, punted that football into the Ford field, or at least tried to punt that football into the.
That was good for him. That looked pretty solid.
Look, I understand people not happy with him being on this team, and because of his legal situation and all, but it is what it is. You're not going to see him for an extended period of time now as he serves that suspension. But when he does get back, we'll see what, injuries and all, and the health of this team. And obviously before they get into that stretch against the AFC North and all, but it could be a timely re-addition to the secondary of this team when he does get back. Not a guy that I don't think that you want to play outside corner a lot, even though he can, but a guy that can wear multiple hats in that secondary. Obviously a smart guy schematically and all like that. So, you got to get things done, in the win column before he does get back, but, could be an integral re-addition when he does come off of the suspension.
Should have a role as a sub-package player. I would expect that, but like you said, we'll have to see what the landscape looks like come Week 10, his first game back after the 8-game suspension, and Pittsburgh having a Week 9 bye. Yeah, Dave, as you mentioned a moment ago, we've been sounding the alarm about the lack of depth at outside corner, the issues in the slot, Pittsburgh needing to add. I'm still convinced at least one outside defensive back will get added at cutdowns, post cutdowns, sometime around that calendar. They need it. I think they need a guy. Trice has progressed. I think he's basically secured a spot, could potentially be used in dime situations. I was hoping to see him get tested more downfield. He made some great plays underneath, and maybe he had great coverage downfield and wasn't tested because of that. But you still don't know a ton about the overall totality of his game, and so there's some pause that I'm giving there. And the slot just still seems to be a big jump ball.
Look, if there's one thing, and I guess the statement is what did we really learn about Corey Trice Jr. in his first preseason action? Because we already knew he was a physical guy.
It's still good to reaffirm that in the NFL.
Sure. I have no issue with that, but it's not like we learned anything new about that, aspect of his game. I really was wanting to see him more in coverage down the field, and unfortunately, and it's no fault of his own, but we didn't see that aspect of it there. So there will be questions about that until he's given the opportunity to answer. I mean, hopefully you don't have to see him a lot. Hopefully your top two corners stay healthy and all like that. But as history has shown, first line outside cornerbacks do end up getting in games, whether you like it or not, because of Nick's here and what have you there. So, but yeah, look, and we have stated this since all off season there, the depth of the cornerback unit, and then what's going to happen in slot. We had questions about right out of the chute, and it's going to be interesting in these next 48 hours to see how that's addressed. And it feels like they absolutely have to. Now, here's the thing about this team in when it comes to kind of final cut down weekend or beginning of week transactions. They don't have a lot of history really overall of claiming guys in this part of the time of the off season there. You normally either see them sign guys off the street or trade for guys there. And you do have to wonder anyway, if anybody worth their salt does get waived, how far are they down on there's a lot of they're not the only team probably looking either. And especially if a guy can play special teams, and that's a whole nother can of worms to open there when you talk about the backup defensive backs on this team and their special teams contributions. This is probably one of the worst preseasons I remember in recent years here when it comes to can somebody separate on special teams. Didn't really come away with a warm feel, especially at the defensive back position overall there. But this is just a long way of saying it will be interesting to see. They have to add at least one or two defensive backs. It feels like to this team in the next 48 hours, or definitely before week 1.
Pittsburgh, for too long since losing Mike Hilton, has just ignored the slot position. They have not invested in it heavily enough. They tried to piecemeal it together. This is not the first time they've gone into week one unsure about their slot position. And that bill comes due, and I'm not sure what it's going to take for this team to really make that investment in the draft or a free agent or some allocation of that type of guy. They need it. They know it's important. And they've not really, been able, not allocated the resources to target somebody like that. Maybe Beanie Bishop can be something. Obviously, there was good buzz on him early in training camp, although I think that was a bit overstated. I'm not going to count him out, but you can't hang your hat on the undrafted rookie free agent being the guy when you go into week one.
Yeah, and look, Thomas Graham, even though he was your camp darling, I guess, per se, we went into this thing not even thinking that he would kind of be in the play for this overall. But here he is as a matter of attrition, really, overall, because you lost Graylin Arnold, who we were geared up to maybe see play in that second preseason game, I think it was. And then he went down right before that and off the roster now at this point. Beanie, unfortunately, unable to see time in that second game, got a little bit of nicked up, and if you're going to put a lot of responsibility on a guy like that, you want to see him play a lot of snaps. And I don't know how much to read into. Look, Graham started over him, and that's probably because Beanie missed a little bit more time, this past week. So a lot of questions there, Alex, in this secondary.
Let's just also mention some other injury-related housekeeping. Peyton Wilson, inside linebacker, did not play in this game. Mike Tomlin confirming, as Wilson told reporters in the lead-up to the game, that Wilson has cleared concussion protocol, but Tomlin chose not to play him. I assume at least in part due to a lack of reps and availability for this Lions finale. Also, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, on Sunday evening, offensive tackle Dylan Cook, who did not play against Detroit, is expected to miss several weeks with a foot injury suffered at some point prior to the Lions game. So you talk about the issues and the injuries along the offensive line, particularly a tackle with Fautanu, his MCL sprain, Jones battling his apparently multiple injuries. Now add Cook to that list, who appears to be a good candidate to go on IR during Tuesday's cutdowns.
Yeah, a lot of things came out on out in the wash on the offensive line, didn't it?
Unfortunately,
yeah. I would expect him to possibly go to IR in these final set of transactions here, designated to return. We got to see Spencer Anderson play left guard, and right tackle throughout the preseason. If there's one guy that really helped himself this preseason, I think it's him. Now, he did give up an easy sack there at right tackle once he moved over there, but I think he's shown you enough that if you got into an emergency situation, and this assumes Moren Jones and Fautanu are ready to start the regular season, at least he gives you an emergency option there at right tackle. I would imagine that Spencer Anderson is going to dress for games right out of the chute here. The only thing that I was hoping maybe to see, but I understand why it didn't happen now at this point, is I would have liked to seen Spencer Anderson get a few snaps at center during preseason, but you said he was taking a snap or two or four or five or six throughout training camp. So but he's yet to do that in any preseason game yet. So that's obviously all I can go off of at this point here. We wondered who would be the second center in the game of this one after Frazier left. It was indeed Ryan McCollum, the most experienced backup center that this team has under contract right now. While I think McCollum, as in totality, represented himself well throughout the preseason, even in his action at guard, it's not a saltine. It's not a Ritz cracker or anything along those lines there. But based on what we saw out of Mason McCormick in his limited snaps at center late in this game, it doesn't look like a guy that's ready to go into a game 4 plays into a game, God forbid, should something happen to Frazier. I'll just kind of leave it at that. I think it's nice to have an emergency option there, but I have not seen enough where I say, okay, well, I'm fine with Mason McCormick being my backup center on this team.
Sure. Yeah, it was only 9 snaps from McCormick at center. Good to get that in-game action on the road for the first time, too. Problem was Pittsburgh only ran 43 offensive plays in this game. Detroit had over 70. And so you just didn't get a ton of volume offensively here to get reps for McCormick. They may have had the plan to get him some extra work, but the snaps really weren't there in the second half. Anderson has snapped on the side during training camp and some of those very initial warmups that, QBs and centers do as that fourth center they need for the 4 quarterbacks. He did not do it once during team periods in training camp. I don't know what he's done in practice since, because obviously Herbig got injured in the final hour of training camp. And so I have not gotten to watch a full practice, post Herbig injury. But I imagine Anderson didn't play center in this game because they needed the tackles. They didn't have healthy tackles. Cook was out. Tanu was out. You get more out early. Broderick Jones is done by the early second quarter, whenever that was. You're not left with many people. You have Devery Hamilton, Anderson Hardy. You need another guy in there. So I imagine because they have just more bodies to kind of work interior, they needed some tackle guys to help get them through this game, which probably curtailed Anderson's chances to play center in this one.
Yeah, and now we'll watch. I mean, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit. McCollum is your most experienced backup center on this team. Could this team go outside here before week 1 and maybe find a guy that can play center and guard for you that you can dress right out to shoot? We'll see. But once again, I McCollum at least has NFL. What has he played? 100 regular
101 snaps, I want to say, Detroit.
Right. So, and he's been around the team. He's obviously been around these quarterbacks all this offseason. So maybe that's the way that you start. I don't know what's going to be out there and available, but what's outside might not necessarily be a huge upgrade over what you have in McCollum right now.
Sure, especially somebody that would have to pick up the system and, get those reps with those veteran quarterbacks. McCollum at least has that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And I shouldn't forget the big man, Tykeem Doss, who played some left tackle.
He can move
in this game. He's a big man. He didn't play great, little up and down, a lot more down, literally on the ground sometimes, but he is a large human being.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he's kept on the practice squad or if they go outside and get another developmental tackle that way.
Or both. They probably need a couple outside help and maybe get an internal guy and a guy like Tykeem Doss. Any other final thoughts here, Dave? I'm with you. Special teams, the coverage teams were poor. You had multiple kickoffs that were past the 30. I think one got out around or near the 40-yard line. Punt coverage, not great overall. Just not seeing the separation there for those specialists. I mean, Des Fitzpatrick had a big 59-yard reception we shouldn't overlook, and that was a great play for him. Has he done enough to make the roster? It still feels a little up in the air. We'll talk about who we kept on our receiver depth chart for our final predictions. But I think I wrote that article the other day for a reason about the 8 special teamers that they should target. Pittsburgh, I think, needs that, a kind of more purer special teams type of a guy. They're in this transitional phase, losing both their gunners in Boykin and James Pierre, and you can certainly feel it.
Des Fitzpatrick was your best gunner throughout the preseason, but stacked up against what you expect out of the position. I mean, it was like the best of the rest. I mean, even early in this game, you saw Scotty Miller and Darius Rush, at least on the first 2 gunner situations there. And then I think they kept Rush in there for a couple more gunner runs. And what was it, Watts maybe on the other side?
Watts. And did Dre Jenkins get looks late too? I'd have to go back to the 21s.
I tell you, Miller got off as far as, against devices and all like that. But, with his size, he's able to get down there and force things certain directions, but I'm not sure he's a guy. But I went back and looked. He has played a little bit of gunner.
Oh, has he? Okay, I didn't even know that.
A little bit of gunner in the NFL.
How recently? Like his early career, I'm guessing, as a
I thought it was fairly recent.
Okay.
Recently,
I meant to check
as well. But that was one thing that I did notice. Let me see here.
I don't think he's ever made a tackle. I was looking at his tackle numbers, and the tackles that he has made came off of interceptions and fumbles. I mean, yeah, because receivers can be good gunners because they know how to get off the line. They know how to release, and they use their hands and their feet well to do that. And Miller did. But the one, I mean, he broke down like 7 yards too early, where he kind of turned the return man inside, but you break down, so you got to run through it, and I don't even know if this guy can really tackle effectively. So to me, that was kind of indicating like we'd like Scotty Miller. We want to try to find different ways to add to his value, which is a positive thing for him. Yeah, I mean, Fitzpatrick, he got the most reps as a gunner. I don't know if he was the best. I don't think anyone was good. Like whoever you call the best was still not good enough.
That was my point. 9 gunner snaps last season for Scotty Miller.
Okay, interesting.
Most of them came early in the season. There, I'm sure you feel me here. I'm not saying that Scotty Miller is your answer there, and I'm not necessarily saying that Des Fitzpatrick is either overall. And then when it comes to Darius Rush too, he was getting down there, but he was another one that was stopping his feet. And especially with it, he was pretty bad. I thought it was pretty bad. This team has gunner questions, and we was hoping at least to get one of those guys to maybe stick out throughout the preseason as we can circle him there. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that I'm not there at this point. So it would not be shocking to see this team go out and get at least one defensive back that either plays in maybe even another safety. I don't know, but they need at least another gunner, and we'll see what happens with Des Fitzpatrick. If Des Fitzpatrick winds up making this 53, odds are good that he'll probably be one of those gunners.
Right, agree. But they could also look for a wide receiver who could potentially replace Fitzpatrick as an upgraded gunner. My one suggestion that I wrote about, Brandon Hill, unfortunately, is no longer an option. He suffered a very serious season-ending knee injury against whoever they played. Houston did in the finale. So unfortunate news for him, obviously.
And a lot of people are predicting Miles Boykin makes the Giants as their gunner, so we'll have to watch that. I did not look in on James Pierre and his status with Washington. Maybe that's a guy that if cut, maybe you consider James Pierre coming back,
Yeah, name to watch for sure. I meant to check about Grant Dubose and what he did Green Bay, if he got more gunner work in the Packers finale or not. But whenever you have a punter in Johnston who's got a big leg, it's going to require and put more stress on the coverage team. And Johnston's never been an elite hang time guy. I think he finished about average in hang time this year. And so when you combine great distance with average hang time, you need a coverage unit. And Pittsburgh has some good coverage guys up front. Like the line is solid up front. Killebrew and Medikevich and Mark Robinson and Connor Hayward, all good there. But the outside guys, big question marks.
The Packers only played Dubose 3 special team snaps in that finale, and none of them is a gunner.
All right. So he's gotten one whole snap at gunner this preseason, a tackle, but it's a very limited sample size to go off of. I still say Zach McPherson. That's the guy that I'm looking at. Philadelphia, likely to be cut. A lot of gunner work. He's got even some cornerback experience. I'm watching Zach McPherson like a hawk here on cut downs.
All right. Well, that will be a fantastic shot call if you pull one of those out of your hat.
I'm hoping so. All right, Dave, I know people, as much as they love our gunner talk, which I'm sure they do, let's talk about our roster predictions here. Dave and I making our final predictions for the initial 53. We both place heavy emphasis on the word initial because we both expect this roster to change in a couple different ways by the time that this roster kind of gets settled by probably Friday, Saturday, and certainly into the September 8th week 1 opener against Atlanta. So let's go through it. They're pretty similar overall, but they're not identical rosters. We'll start with quarterback, and they are identical here in Russell Wilson, Justin Fields and Kyle Allen. To me, no discussion. And also, I assume, Dave, no discussion, no thought in your mind about who will start week one either.
Yeah, the way we've talked, there's not much to fill airtime with here, right here. These are the same three we've had all preseason. The only way it's not is if they decide to go with two quarterbacks, which would be really unusual for this team. So these are the three, and there's no question in my mind. And I've never wavered on this. I know you haven't either. Nothing has ever led me to believe that this has been a quarterback competition. And if it was, I don't think Russell Wilson did enough to lose it, and I don't think Justin Fields did enough to win it. So I expect Russell Wilson to be the week one starter, and I'm sure you do as well.
I do. I know Dan Orlovsky was on ESPN today feeling bamboozled by Mike Tomlin deceiving about the quarterback competition. If you think this thing was a real competition, I mean, yes, had Wilson looked miserable and Fields looked amazing, then that conversation may have actually occurred. But barring that, which obviously did not occur, this thing was Wilson's job the whole way.
Right.
Running back, keeping the same three as well. That's been consistent on both of our predictions and probably the listeners as well in Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, Cordero Patterson. I saw Warren hopping up and down the sideline in that game, so that's a good sign for his week one status, I would think.
Yeah, and look, the main takeaway here is Cordero Patterson was able to go from NFI list at the start of training camp to a 31-yard touchdown run to end it. So
good point.
That's it. That's your take.
And if Warren couldn't play week one because of the hamstring injury, you can elevate somebody. It was unfortunate that Jonathan Ward did not play in this game for that hamstring injury that he suffered last day of training camp. That's a guy, though, if he is healthy for week one, I think could be a potential elevation. Yeah,
with you only keeping three on the 53, there will probably be at least two running backs on the practice squad, I would think.
Agreed. Wide receiver, this is where it gets kind of interesting, Dave. You start having some discussions about who do you keep, who do you not keep. We're both keeping six, and we're both keeping the same six in George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin III, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, and Dez Fitzpatrick. So Fitzpatrick making it for both of us. I'm sure the last two, Miller and Fitzpatrick, the most debatable names. How much did you struggle putting those guys on there? How safe do you think they really are?
I didn't struggle in the end in putting both those guys on there, to be quite honest with you. The struggle that I had is the plausibility of Roman Wilson going potentially starting the season on IR. However, the more you kind of think this out, when the injury happened with him, the supposed nature of the ankle injury, and then the fact that you still have 2 weeks more time for him to get healthier before the season starts. Now, will he be? Obviously he missed all of training camp really overall. Especially once the pads went on, missed all the preseason. You do have to wonder how ready he will be to be in a uniform, even if he's 100% healthy. So I'm kind of expecting, if he is, Roman Wilson's not moved to IR, to be inactive in week one. Dez did everything you asked him to do outside of be an even better gunner. And then Scotty Miller, all Scotty Miller did was everything that was asked of him. It felt thin overall because of what Roman Wilson has gone through. The position group felt too thin to only have 5 total wide receivers on the 53, at least to start the season. That's how my mind worked to get to the situation here where I have 6 on the 53-man roster.
Okay, and Miller was the new addition because you didn't have him on your previous roster, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, and so I agree. I think Wilson, I'd still be surprised if he was IR'd to begin the season, to miss the first month. I don't know if that's necessary to miss that much time with the ankle injury, but a guy that is going to have to catch the moving train and probably looking at week one inactive, which would open the door for somebody like Miller.
Right. And, assuming he is inactive, is 4 other receivers just enough? And that's why, I went, that along with Dez Fitzpatrick having special teams assets there. It just, keeping 5 in totality, thinking that Roman Wilson will be inactive, just wasn't going to cut it.
Is Calvin Austin 100% safe?
I don't know. I would like to think he is, unless they go out and trade for somebody or something. And then even if you did that, depending on, quality, are we talking Ayuk? Are we talking back end Dubose or something like that? That's special teams. But I think Calvin Austin's fairly safe.
That's how I would phrase it too. Wouldn't call it 100%. If you wanted to speculate wildly about potential shocking names who would get cut, and that would, I think, classify, I would mention Calvin Austin, because Scotty Miller can do similar things, but we both are carrying Austin on our initial 53. Tight end, keeping 4, none of us keeping a true fullback. Sorry to all the Jack Coletto fans out there. Pat Frymouth, Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward, and we're both keeping Michael Pruitt over Rodney Williams for that 4th tight end spot.
Michael Pruitt just did enough, period, in all facets here. Obviously, I still think Rodney Williams is a better special teams player, but if you're going to consistently roll out 2 or 3 tight ends in this offense and an occasional fullback, Pruitt obviously can fit a little bit into that role should you need him to. It just in totality, Rodney Williams just did not do enough on the offensive side of football. Michael Pruitt, even for his age, did more than enough. The exclamation point was him able to go down the field and catch a football down the field in the middle of the field. In that aspect, don't get used to seeing that out of Michael Pruitt, but it's just one other thing that he can do. And while I still don't think he's going to make the Pro Bowl as a blocking tight end, he is better in that phase of the game than Rodney Williams, and it's not even close.
And there is a tiny bit of special teams value. I assume he'll be on the kick return unit, one of those 2 guys back from the initial line there. So not as valuable on special teams as Rodney Williams, but Williams should go to the practice squad. And if they got to call somebody up, then he can be elevated. All right. Offensive line, we are keeping the same 9. We've kind of been not totally in sync on offensive line in our predictions, but in the end, we are on the same playing field, both keeping 9 in Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Dan Moore Jr., Isaac Seumalo, James Daniels, Mason McCormick, Spencer Anderson, Zach Frazier. I think that's the clear-cut top 8. Number 9 is, we're both going with Ryan McCollum. I still struggle with this one. Is he worth keeping on the 53? Do you cut him initially? Maybe you elevate him later. But I don't know if you want to mess with the backup center spot too much. And McCollum is the backup center right now, so that's where my head was at.
Yeah, and as we mentioned at the top of the show, it'd be interesting to see if they go out there and try to find an upgrade over him. Once again, I don't think Mason McCormick showed me enough in his limited time there. You could play the elevation game, but what if you run out of elevations? That aspect of it, I think I even had Ryan McCollum in my next to last 53 as well too. To me, it feels like it's been trending this way ever since Nate Herbig went down. It's not great, but at least he does have experience. He's serviceable. I think even if you got into a game and you lost one of your guards, I think Spencer Anderson would be first one up, either him or Mason McCormick. Before McCollum. So the only way I think you would you obviously would dress McCollum, but the only way he gets into a game, I think, is if something were to happen, God forbid, to Zach Frazier. But especially once the news came out Sunday night about Dylan Cook and that foot injury, this group of 9 put themselves together pretty easy for me.
Yeah, Spencer Anderson, his good play, and the injuries to Cook and Herbig really cemented his spot, and we're both leaving Cook off because remember, under these new rules, Cook can go straight to IR on cutdown day. 2 players can avoid having to do the whole make the 53 initially and then go on IR the next day. That whole song and dance. The NFL has gotten smarter in allowing 2 players to go straight to IR to be able to return, provided they are done, listed there and placed there on Tuesday on cut down day, August 27th. And so that's where Cook fits into our O-line picture.
Right. So,
All right.
So 25 for each of us on the offensive side of football, right?
And the same 25 on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, we'll go defensive line here, and this is where it starts to get interesting in terms of making some maybe tougher decisions. But in the end, we're keeping 7 and the same 7 in Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, Dean Lowry, Isaiah Loudermilk, DeMarvin Leal, and Keanu Benton, and Montravius Adams. So I know you wrestled with this a little bit, Dave, and I did as well. Loudermilk, I think Leal would be really surprising if he was cut at this point. It's kind of down to, do you keep 6, and would it be Lowry or Loudermilk getting moved if it was only 6?
Well, we know it's at least going to be 6, and the question we've had most of this is 7. And I think, at least in my head, DeMarvin Leal and the versatility aspect of being able to play on the line and some outside linebacker made it, and the way he did play in these games made it easier for me to put him on the roster. I think the question's less about him being on the 53 and more so about really Loudermilk and Lowry. Those are the two that I do kind of wonder about. I think Loudermilk had finished the preseason strong. Overall, Lowry, I think I saw enough for him where I would be comfortable if he made it. Would I be floored if either one of those guys did not? No, but and look, one of these guys is going to be inactive. You got to have at least 5 inactives for games. If you kept 7, and if you dressed Hayward, Ogunjobi, Benton, Lowry, or Adams, Leal probably gets the helmet due to kind of the position flexibility, being the better pass rusher. That would leave Loudermilk not dressing as an inactive. So once again, Leal's flexibility played into this. And then really, you try to keep your best 53 too. And we'll get into the secondary and all like that. I think that made this position group a little bit easier overall. Could this team go outside, maybe find an upgrade over a Loudermilk or Lowry? I guess that's not impossible, but how much more of an upgrade would it be over those two guys, and would you rather have the devil that you know?
Yeah, I think you're content. You're happy with the group that you have. There is good depth overall. Just a question of, do you keep 6 or 7? 7 is heavy, but they kept 7 last year. I think maybe this year's 7 is better than what last year's 7 was initially, and certainly what it turned out to be. I don't want to get too over my skis. And listen, if Hayward ever went down, you need multiple people to replace him. That's not a one-man job. It's not just a Dean Lowry job or an Isaiah Loudermilk job if you lost Hayward, or even Ogunjobi. And so Pittsburgh is building through the trenches. They have good depth there. You keep their depth. Leal, outside linebacker, D tackle. He's not really a base end either, at 275 pounds. And Lowry and Loudermilk are more true blue 3-4 base ends to play the run. And so you keep those because of that. So that's what it came down to. I thought about Loudermilk. Could he get cut? That would seem to be, if you made me go, let me ask you this, Dave. If somebody said they're only keeping 6, who's the odd man out?
Yeah, it'd be Loudermilk.
That's what I was going to go with too. He did improve his pass rush, even though it's never his calling card. So run defense can be a little shaky. I think you had the clip of him getting washed on the goal line against Detroit, against a double team. That's a tough situation for him, but he's become a steady enough player, improved enough to make this 53. It's one of the best 53, as you said.
Yeah, you don't want him out there for 50 snaps a game or really 25 snaps a game. But if you needed 6 or 7 snaps a game, that's ideal for him.
Inside linebacker, keeping the same 5. We are both keeping Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts, Peyton Wilson, Tyler Medikevich, and Mark Robinson. I think as the summer's gone on, been less and less debate about this group, especially with Robinson's spot. I think he's locked it up here as a multi-phase, really core special teamer. Ditto Medikevich, and Cole Holcomb should just transfer to reserve PUP. And just to be clear, he does not have to make the initial 53. Holcomb can go straight to reserve PUP.
Correct. The only real kind of thing here is, why was Tyler Medikevich held out of the preseason finale? Was it due to him getting a little bit dinged up in that previous preseason game? Is there enough there? Is it more serious than what we know? We can only deal with things that we know. And right now the assumption is, at least in my head, that he'll be ready to go 2 weeks from now when they play Atlanta. Obviously, core special teamer, Mark Robinson. Obviously, I don't think you want either Matakevich or Robinson play a heavy amount of snaps on the defensive side of football. Robinson he would probably be my first choice to get on the field over Matakevich. But even so, both those guys should be active and special teamers.
And you have a strong top three in Queen, Roberts, and Wilson. All right, let's go to outside linebacker. And this is where we have a difference. We have a change. I'm keeping 4 in TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Kyron Johnson. You are keeping just 3 in Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig. And Leal is at de facto quasi number 4. I struggle with this one a lot. I'm sure you did too. But why only 3 and why not Kyron Johnson?
What other 3 do you need other than these 3? Mm-hmm. And then look, I think Leal showed you enough should you get in a emergency situation, to get you out of a game at outside linebacker. I think Leal can be that guy for you. Obviously, you don't want to get to that point. The other thing came down to, look, Kyron Johnson did nothing to hurt his chances. It's funny thinking back, right? We the moment Jeremiah Moon was added via waivers late last season, said, okay, all right. Maybe they got that 4th outside linebacker there. He could play a little bit on special teams. And then when we got into me writing about the 90 and 30, I said, wait a minute, not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say. This team liked Kyron Johnson second half of the season to come up and play some special teams aspect of the game. Kyron, and we get into the preseason here. Jeremiah Moon could not stay on the field. That hurt his chances. Had the 5 snaps in the second preseason game, and he was sat down completely.
Yeah, it's wild. He had to be hurt, right?
Yeah, he's got to be hurt. And we kind of wondered, did injury play into that at all? Not being on the field in a position battle, roster spot battle for the preseason finale is not good.
Right.
Especially when you only log 5 snaps a week ahead. If either one of these 2 guys wind up making it, it's obviously going to be Kyron Johnson. I just wondered, is his special teams ability, and plus you've got to remember the inactive list that played into my thoughts in this as well too. Was it enough? And I chose to, because I wanted to free up the extra roster spot for a wide receiver, for a six wide receiver. I had to cut somewhere. And the true 4th outside linebacker spot ended up being the cut. He would have been my 54th player on this roster here. Kyron Johnson would. I wonder if it was enough. And I think back once again, I put this in my analysis. Preseason started with most of us thinking, hey, this is 2 dogs, 1 bone, and Jeremiah Moon and Kyron Johnson, so to speak. And here we are questioning if it will be neither of these dogs.
Yeah, truthfully, when I first sat down to make my final 53, I had the same intent as you. I'm going to keep just 3 true outside linebackers and have Leal be the de facto number 4. He started this game over Kyron Johnson at outside linebacker. Leal did. But as we kind of walk through the entirety and totality of the roster, it came down to be the best 53. And Johnson was one of those best 53 men. He may not even have a prominent role on special teams. He probably wouldn't be on the punt coverage unit initially, may not play on some other units, but there are some certainly intriguing traits about his game. His first step is so stupid good. He is so quick off the ball. There is special teams value. Pittsburgh values edge rushers overall. Somebody gets hurt. You want to have an option there to maybe go with a Kyron Johnson, get him some snaps. His run defense is pretty poor. He gets pushed around because of his lack of frame and length and size and strength, but he was one of the best 53, and he had a good training camp early on. I talked about him a lot early in camp. He shined in game, got a ton of pressure, didn't get the sacks, but got the pressure that created sacks. And so I think it's a guy that you just don't want to lose.
I definitely struggled with that aspect of it. Like I said, if I was allowed a 54-man roster, he'd be on it. So it was one of the questions that I had that I struggled with here.
Cornerback, I think we both had some struggles here, and the team probably having some struggles figuring out who to keep and how to lay this roster out. You're keeping 6, I'm keeping 5. And we're both keeping the same initial 5 Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson, Corey Trice Jr., Beanie Bishop Jr., and Thomas Graham Jr., all the juniors, and you're keeping a 6th corner in Darius Rush.
It came down to, man, how comfortable am I going into week 1 with just 3 outside corners in Porter, Jackson, and Trice?
Yeah, for me,
especially with not knowing exactly what Joey's might be dealing with, even though we think it's minor and there's 2 weeks to go.
And now Trice has the groin. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. And Graham and Bishop both being, inside guys and questionable kind of inside guys at that. Look, I'm not the president of the Darius Rush fan club. I don't think he helped himself really much of any outside of actually being a guy that can get down on special teams as a gunner. He wasn't great once he got down there. They could use this is the position I struggled the most with of the groups, and it's the one also that I feel fairly confident in. You're going to see, just because you make the 53 in this group doesn't mean you're going to be on the 53 in week 1. But if it were, I wondered if they would go into the week 1 game with 3 outside cornerbacks in Porter, Jackson, and Trice, and especially with 2 of those guys nicked up to some degree.
I agree wholeheartedly, but I view this as the initial 53, the Tuesday 4 p.m. cut down, not reflective of how it'll look week 1. I think they should add somebody on the outside. And to me, again, I talk about best 53, and it came down to like Kyron Johnson, the 6th corner, and Darius Rush. We'll talk about Ryan Watts here in a second. Rush, to me, I don't know what he did positively on teams or at corner to make a 53. And I was high on Rush coming out of South Carolina. I was a big fan of him. I wanted Pittsburgh to target him. I was happy when they got him last year, midway through the season. I just didn't see it. Special teams, a negative impact. Defensively, at corner, he was okay. Only played, 8 snaps in the finale against Detroit. And that was a lot of sub-package dime work, not as a dime defender, but as an extra corner when Trice would kick over to that kind of dime role. I just did not see him having the value of making the 53 initially.
Look, it would not surprise me if Darius Rush does not make it. I would assume Rush is probably your 54th.
No, he was not my 54th. He was probably 56 or 55 or something like that. Ryan Watts. Okay. I had Watts above Rush in my head.
Okay. All right.
And then what do you do with slot? I mean, Bishop and Graham, do you keep both? Do you keep one? Neither? It's a whole mess.
I initially had Bishop going to, I think, the practice squad. And then I went back and looked at some of his special teams work early. And gunner, at least he gives you, he's a physical guy. He can play against, he can come up and make tackles against the run, something he's better at, I think, than Thomas Graham. Look, there's questions at slot, period. Either Graham or Bishop might be off this initial roster. This room is the room that needs the most attention post setting the 53. And look, if they here's the thing. If this team actually trades for a player in the final moments here, then somebody ain't making it, and then they obviously could trade for 2 of them,
Sure.
And those incomers be part of the initial 53 per se. So, right. Without a doubt, I had the most questions about this position group.
And that is always tough because you could trade for somebody Tuesday and, like you said, become part of the initial 53, and it's going to throw a monkey wrench into everything. Whose spot is less safe right now, Bishop or Graham?
That's tough.
It is.
I mean, it's really tough. I would call it a draw. Really, it could go either way. I'm not gonna be shocked when it comes to Rush, Graham, or Bishop. I'm not gonna be shocked whatever happens there, Alex. Just plain and simple with those 3.
Sure, I'm with you. I would say Graham is slightly less safe than Bishop. I think Bishop will have value as a rundown corner, that Millette Sullivan role. I know he didn't get to show a ton of it, but I think what we saw in his mentality, what he put on tape in college kind of shows that. Graham could be more of the pass down guy, but I also think he could work into Sean Elliott based on the current construction as a slot kind of coverage guy. But they need outside help, and they're probably going to add to it.
The way Mike Tomlin was phrasing things about Bishop in the last couple of press conferences, too, made me seem like, okay, he's probably safe, but Mike Tomlin doesn't want him to feel safe. You know what I'm saying? Okay. The old reverse psych. I love to read way too much into context into what Tomlin says at times, but I kind of wondered if he was just trying to send Beanie Bishop a message in those last two press conferences.
Because he said, when somebody had asked Tomlin, has Bishop shown you enough? He said absolutely no. Not.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, that's also true because he'd been hurt. And
right. But I took that as you better get, you better get on the field.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, I think corner could be the one position group that looks really funky on initial cutdowns where I had the one iteration where I had them only keeping 4. I think that's possible. They're going to add to it, obviously, but we've seen initial rosters look kind of weird on the onset before they settle things in with outside additions. I mean, they kept 7 wide receivers a couple of years back. That was because of the IR thing, Calvin Austin, his rookie year. But, I'm with you. I think you said it well. However corner looks, assuming that Porter, Jackson, and Trice are kept, anything behind that is, I can see it's all plausible.
Right. And look, what's more likely to happen? Them trade for a guy or pluck somebody off waivers?
It just depends on who's available on the trade market. I think they could trade for somebody. Like you said, that's been more common than claiming somebody off of waivers. But they signed Desmond King last year. So I think you explore all avenues to add in the secondary, particularly at corner. All right, and then at safety, both keeping the same 4, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, DeMonte Casey, and Miles Killebrew, which of course means we are both leaving off Ryan Watts, which is probably not making our readers too happy right
now. You can't help but just roll back to that one press conference that Terrell Austin gave. Just basically saying, yeah, he's out there, he's playing safety. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he's out there and he's giving it all. Man, he had a couple opportunities to have a couple of interceptions in the preseason. Unfortunately, didn't make those. I don't know how much you trust him as a gunner yet. He is a good developmental guy, I think, at this stage, and obviously as a late round draft pick, you would hope to get that. What one thing did he do absolutely fantastic? And then to end it all on the last true offensive play of the preseason before the final kneel down, he gets a stinger, that at least we think it's a stinger, kind of calls that into question. So I don't think you'd have any issue getting this guy through waivers and be a nice practice squad guy to kind of work with there. I just don't know that he did anything well enough really to make the 53.
Yeah, I think there's traits there that are interesting, but he is still in the trait stage where it's still a lot of development, a lot of technique, a lot of assignment stuff that needs to be improved upon. And I'm with you. I know many people will sit there and say, and this conversation occurs each year, oh, he'll be claimed. There's no chance he gets through waivers. You'll be surprised. A bunch of players get claimed, but it's generally more veteran types, guys with higher pedigrees at more valuable positions, offensive line, cornerback, those types of things. Less so on a former college corner making the transition to safety as a 6th round pick where a bunch of teams passed on him in the draft. So I like Ryan Watts. I like what he can be. I just think it's going to take some time and some seasoning. He can do that on the practice squad to start. Although I do think I try to think about special teams and like who's my left wing and could he work as a gunner? It's hard to kind of find some of those names, and that's where Watts could potentially be in the mix. He was my number 54. He was my 54. Can I also give you a crazy thought too? What about Jalen Elliott?
Yeah,
he did well on special teams. He's physical. He's known. He could play left wing. He started left wing on the punt team in this one. I think it makes more sense as a practice squad elevation thing. But like, I'm not going to even discount Jalen Elliott making the team as that 53rd guy, as that 5th safety.
And this is a guy that was off the roster already once during the preseason.
Yeah, they cut him. They only brought him back because of injuries. But we've seen that song and dance guys get brought in mid-camp.
Not a great tackler overall, but he's definitely
True.
not afraid to throw his body around. So yeah, if the wash comes out with him as a fifth safety, when I sit here and throw my hands up and throw everything off my desk and say, I can't believe, what a shock, it would be a minor upset to some degree because somebody would be left off, obviously, and it wouldn't be one of Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, DeMonte Casey, or Miles Killebrew, but sure. It's plausible.
Yeah, it'd be cutting Kyron Johnson or one of the slot corners who didn't do enough would be, how Elliott would get on there. Elliott, yeah, he missed some tackles in run defense, but I think he made 2 special teams tackles. He made a kick coverage tackle, and I think he made one on punt team too. And so you're looking for guys that are making plays on teams. He made some plays.
It would be a true sense of Danny Smith pounding the table probably for him.
Agreed. All right, special teams, chalk here, Boz, Johnston, and Kuntz. Those are your 3 specialists. Who would be your 5 game day inactives based on your construction of your roster, Dave?
Kyle Allen, emergency quarterback, would be 1. Roman Wilson as an inactive week 1. Mason McCormick inactive week 1. That's 3. Isaiah Loudermilk, defensive lineman, would be 4. And
5th one's always tricky.
Probably Darius Rush.
Okay. Darius Rush. Yeah. So I had Allen. I put Scotty Miller, but with Wilson's injury, that could be Wilson week 1 out of the gate. McCormick, Loudermilk, and then I put Thomas Graham as my 5th inactive.
Okay.
And then reserve suspended, Cam Sutton will go straight there. Cole Holcomb will go to reserve PUP. And we both have Dylan Cook being on IR, designated to return as one of those 2 exceptions. And could there be a second name? Probably will be a second name that we can't really guess at right now, but there'll be at least one, I think, in Dylan Cook.
Yeah, and obviously Nate Herbig and David Perales are still on IR.
And they cannot return this year because they were placed on IR prior to Tuesday's cut down. All right, practice squad, 17 men, and hopefully Wolshoff healthy enough to be on there. You want to just run through some of the notable names you put on your practice squad, Dave?
I mean, I'll run through them quick. On the offensive side, Jonathan Ward, Michael P. Ryan, John Rice Plumlee, Rodney Williams, Jack Coletto, Joey Fisher, Quez Watkins, Tykeem Doss on the offensive side of football. On the defensive side of football, Kyron Johnson, Jacoby Wyndham. There might be a little something to work with in the future with Jacoby Wyndham. Ryan Watts, Zion Gilbert, Kyler McMichael, Logan Lee, Willington Prevleon, Jalen Elliott, and Julius Welshoff.
In Wolshoff, again, that international exemption that allows Pittsburgh to keep 17. I'll read off my 17. John Rice Plumlee, he better make it. That's football justice to me for him to make this practice squad. I'll assume Jonathan Ward is healthy enough, so I'll put Ward and Aaron Champlin at running back, Jack Coletto at fullback, Jeray Jenkins and Quez Watkins at wide receiver, Rodney Williams at tight end, Tykeem Doss, the lone offensive lineman. Defensively, defensive lineman Logan Lee, the 6th-round pick, and Jacob Slade. Thought he showed some end nose tackle versatility and played okay in the finale. Jacoby Whitman at inside linebacker, Welshoff, and I'll go Marcus Haynes at edge to give them some additional depth there. Darius Rush and Zion Gilbert at corner, and Ryan Watts and Jalen Elliott at safety. They will certainly add outsiders, especially on the offensive line. So I know this will be wrong. They need some offensive tackle help, and they will find that on the outside more so than internally. But internally, those are my 17.
Nobody will have to worry about us nailing all 17 practice squad spots. I can guarantee that because there will be outsiders there.
Which player on your 53 were you the least confident in writing down as part of your 53? Rush. Okay, so he was your 53rd guy. Not sure who it was for me. Maybe Kyron. Had some thoughts on Loudermilk and the corners and Graham and Bishop. I don't know what that name would stick out the most as. I'll probably go Kyron Johnson as the name that I'm least certain of.
Okay.
So overall, our differences offensively were the same. Both keeping 25 on defense. You're keeping Rush. I'm keeping Kyron Johnson. That is really the one difference we came down to.
Yeah, and look, we talk all the time. Usually these things kind of work themselves out into a position where there's not a lot of hard hard, questions here. I look back, I think, let's see, I'm going to go through my pre-training camp roster prediction. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think I had 46 guys on my pre-training camp 53-man roster, 46 of my final 53 on there. So
I wonder how that compares to other years.
Well, I mean, I would like to think that's probably because, there's a lot of givens, obviously, within this. Now, we did not expect the Nick Herbig injury. I tell you, people that I had on there that obviously are not on my final 53. Rodney Williams was on my initial one. He's not on my final. Nate Herbig, for obvious reasons. Dan Moore. So that's what I'm up to. 3 names already there.
Did you say Dan Moore?
No, I'm sorry. Nate Herbig and Dylan Cook. Sorry.
Okay.
Cook.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Let's see. Defensive line. I had ended up with the same 7 there. Same with inside. Jeremiah Moon, I had on my initial one. He's not on my final one. Josiah Scott, remember him? Obviously, he was on my initial, not on my final. And I think that's it, Alex. So Scott, Moon, Cook, and Herbig. That's 5. Rodney Williams, 6. So 6.
Okay. And so for that was your pre-training camp one, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking at I did one post-draft, but I'll do a pre-training camp one to keep it the same. Dylan Cook and Nate Herbig, obviously injury related there. I did not have, I didn't have the Marvin Leal on my initial, but I had the other 6. So in terms of guys that were on that are no longer on, it was the lineman, Jeremiah Moon. I had Cole Holcomb, thinking maybe he could come back. Obviously, he's going to be a reserve.
I'm sorry,
guy.
I had Holcomb too. That was my 7th.
Okay, and then
this was before the contract adjustment at all. So I was there's 7 players in my pre-training camp 53-man roster prediction that are not on my final.
And I think I'm at 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm at 6. The linemen that I mentioned: Moon, Holcomb, Josiah Scott, and Ryan Watts. So honestly, the roster was kind of settled, surprisingly.
Yeah. And I would imagine if you go back over time, you probably float around 6 to 9.
Yeah, that's probably fair, but it felt a little more settled this year than maybe the previous years, where the roster felt a bit more open at the start of camp and a little more debate at the end. But we'll see what the end product is, and there will probably be a surprise that we're not talking about or not considering much that catches us. All right, Dave, run the show pretty long here. Any other final thoughts? What did you think about? I think I asked you this the other day, and I got a lot of hate mail yesterday about my suggestion of bringing back Patrick Peterson. I still think it makes sense.
I wouldn't.
You look at this slot situation, though, and also like Pittsburgh loves to do their post-snap rotations with spinning Minka down. Like you say, robbing these crossing routes. Like, who's going to spin with him? Is it going to be Bishop? Is it going to be Graham? I mean, I don't have a guy that can do that.
I'm not calling you crazy. I wouldn't.
Like, what's the answer? Like, what's the solution? You need
something outside somewhere.
But like, is that guy going to be ready right away? Because you got to get the guy up to speed too.
Yeah.
They tried that with King last year, and that didn't work out. Maybe it works out, but you're rolling more of the dice there. Like Peterson, and not to play outside corner. God, no, he's not an outside corner. He's not an every down slot guy, pass down slot guy, dime package, obvious pass situation, 10, 20 snaps per game. Bishop could still be a rundown corner. You can give that flexibility there. Peterson will be better in year 2 with his angles, his tackling, because he's more known at the position. He's in Spain right now, so I don't know if he's even considering this. He was eating noodles on his Instagram story.
Yeah, it's still 2 weeks to go, though.
But yeah, and you can get him some time, get his legs. Conditioning will be an issue, but he's not going to play a ton of snaps. I just, if not Peterson, fine, I get that. But this team's got some problems, and I think really not being able to rotate Minka and spin him around, really limits them.
Okay. I understand the plausibility of it and all. I just personally, I wouldn't, but.
Okay. I think the one thing you could try to do is have Deshaun Elliott come down over slot more often and saying your dime package of Elliott over as your slot corner, Casey coming on as that secondary, that extra safety, and then Trice obviously playing that role as well. That's probably the best internal solution that you have right now.
All right. Shall we get to wrapping it up with the email machine?
Yeah, let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, Homeless Greg back in here. David Ox, is there a lack of criticism or blame on Omar Khan from Steeler fans and national pundits? Putting the wide receiver room to the wayside for once. Here are the 2 weeks before the season. We still have absolutely needed slot corner. I feel like he has gotten a pass since he swindled the Bears in the Claypool trade. Yes, the need of slot corner has been apparent since the departure of Mike Hilton. This could have been addressed in free agency or the draft. I feel like the slot corner position is the new middle linebacker Shazier situation. He's sitting on over $15 million in cap space. He says, wake up, Omar. Look, we just talked extensively about the slot situation there. Let's see what the final product is here before we really rip into it some. We think there's moves on the way. We'll have to see who those players are and what all happens. But I mean, yeah. Look, you're preaching to the choir, I think, Greg.
Yeah, I've been critical of that. We mentioned on a recent podcast about this team's lack of depth at corner and receiver, two areas where teams generally want to be strong at, and we better be tested. Better have some good receivers to throw to and some corners that can go cover those good receivers. So as Dave said, we'll see how the initial 53 looks and kind of how things look by Tuesday, by Wednesday, and go from there. But yeah, there's concern.
Bryce wants to know, could it actually be possible, and I can't believe I'm writing this, that Dan Moore Jr. is the new Marcus Gilbert? Gilbert became a baller in his 5th year, and could Dan Moore Jr. have his coming out party in his 4th year? Look, we talked earlier in the show. Dan Moore certainly held his own during the preseason, enough so that he'll likely be the week 1 starter. We'll see where it goes from there. This team has 2 drafted first-round tackles that they're going to want to get on the field as soon as possible here, and they will at some point. I guess it's just a matter of how long can Dan Moore Jr. hold them off.
I get the Gilbert comparison. I'll give you maybe a weirder one, but one that I think fits better. I'll say Dan Moore is the William Gay of the Pittsburgh Steelers present day, the guy that fans hated, especially early on, but stuck around and continued to play and carve out a role, and people eventually ended up being big fans of William Gay. Don't think the same will happen with Dan Moore in that respect, but that guy that Steeler fans hate or dislike very much that sticks around. That's kind of my feel on Dan Moore.
All right, let's see where else to here.
Anything else?
Yep.
No live stream tonight. I was wondering, we'll do a little bit on schedule, but live stream next Monday.
Christopher King about Jeremiah Moon. Would love to hear more about Moon. Wonder if he'll be an IR candidate. Just seems strange. He was supposed to battle for the 4th outside linebacker spot. He got very few snaps in the final 2 preseason games. Seems like Kyron Johnson was uncontested in that battle. He was impressive, so probably a decent chance he wins the spot regardless. Just would have liked to see more opportunity with Moon. Chris, yeah, we talked about all that. No snaps for Moon in the finale. Maybe there's something going on injury-wise with him that would cause him to, I don't know, is he a type of guy that you just waive injured, or would you use up one of your, I mean, you can only have 2 go direct to IR. Mm-hmm. I mean, I say, so I suppose it's plausible. The big question, I think, Chris, when it comes to this is, does Kyron Johnson make the 53 or does he not? It won't be Moon. Yeah,
it won't be Moon. Could Moon go as one of those IR to return guys? You have the 2nd spot, but you can also only designate 8 guys total throughout the season.
Right.
And God forbid you have a slew of injuries. Hopefully you don't get to that point. You got big problems if you do. I don't think I would use Moon as one of those IR to return slots because of the potential of injuries midseason.
I agree. Let's go to Andrew Gallus. Do you guys think we will see the Steelers maximize their 2 IR designated to return spots? One on either Roman Wilson or Dylan Cook. Neither is expected to be early contributor, blah, blah, blah. Andy, look, Dylan Cook, I expect to go to IR with designation to return. The whole Roman Wilson thing is plausible, But once again, man, he's been sidelined for all these weeks, and you got 2 more weeks. And if you put him on IR designated return, you wouldn't have him for 4 weeks. That feels a little bit rich.
When would he be able to come back? When is week 5? Well, what is the date on that? 2024. Do we have let me pull up a schedule here. Oh, that would be it'd be like October 6th would be his first game eligible back, which is week 5 against Dallas. I mean, he got hurt on like August 1st or whatever it was. Is he going to miss 2.5 months with an ankle sprain? I think it's just smarter. I don't know. I don't know the extent. He seems to be recovering. I think you just make him inactive maybe week 1 if he's not all the way ready back.
That's where I'm at. But it's a good question nonetheless, yeah. Andy. Deshaun Campbell, what's up? Hope you guys are as glad as I am that it's football season. I really don't know why this game just such an excitement feel to it, even though we all know we're going to be stressed out. Hope you guys got to watch Florida State, Georgia Tech. I did not. It was truly amazing, but I do have to know what you guys regret the most about the analysis and draft profile of Nick Herbig, because you guys don't miss a fill, but he's turned into such a good player. I don't know. I guess Deshaun, and I'm sure several will keep throwing Nick Herbig back at us, Alex. And I think we've addressed that several times about our initial analysis being wondered if he could stay on the outside. Would he have to play on the inside? We have no issue admitting that that was a mistake. Looking back to even think that was plausible. And I think we spent the first half of part of this show talking about how this guy's actually even gotten better.
Yeah, no shame in admitting that. I mean, I was just wrong in the sense of believing where he would have to play. And there are outliers that can overcome that lack of size and frame. There was a lot of talk around Herbig and Kyle Van Noy. Could he be the next Van Noy? And it's looking that way, maybe even better than what Kyle Van Noy ended up becoming around New England, all the places that he was at. So he was stronger than I thought. His work ethic is insane. It's hard to judge maybe work ethic when you're profiling a guy and not able to see him, up close and personal the way that we are here in training camp settings. But yeah, it's just one of those outliers that I missed on.
He's still developing, man.
Yeah.
Still
gonna get better.
That's the thing about it, is this guy just keeps getting better on top of everything else. Xerxes. Why did Russell Wilson only play 1 series? He missed so much of camp. He needs chemistry with the first unit. Completing 2 for 2 isn't enough. No divas in Pittsburgh. You can't bubble wrap Wilson and expose Fields to risky bootlegs. Do you think Fields can read a defense effectively? And then he has that what ended up being that goal line sweep and a screenshot of the Steelers having the 3 outside guys lined up on 2 players. That was a design run all the way. First and foremost, you can watch those 3 come off the ball, and they're all trying to block.
The Fields run, is that what he's talking about? Yeah, that they ran that in training camp in 7 shots one day. There might have been some sort of miscommunication or some hiccup, because Michael Pruitt looked like he was going to crack the end, and then Moore ended up taking him. I think because at the end just fired off so hard that he kind of ran into Moore, and Moore just had to pick him up. Something might have gotten weird there. The play was not super successful, but yeah, that was designed the whole way. Why did Wilson play 1 series? He's a starting quarterback, and they put the ball in the end zone, and you wanted to get him the heck out of there to get ready for week 1 at Atlanta. That's why he played 1 series.
Yep, exactly. All right, I think we got through most of them here. Alex, anything else to add before we get out of here?
No, we'll come back on Wednesday with this roster at 53, and maybe we'll know some new names at that point, but we'll have a lot to talk about.
Okay, in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast at gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. We'll be back on Wednesday to reset the 53-man roster, at least the initial one, and whatever transactions and all, go from there. So it's going to be a busy week. Hope you stay tuned on SteelersDepot.com, and once again, we'll be back on Wednesday as well. So until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.